All right, so today we're going to dissect a conflict that starts with a single moment of personal tragedy and just spirals into a full-blown global crisis. It's a story fueled by grief, by anger, and the really dangerous power of political rhetoric. Let's break down how a war of words becomes a very, very real war.
And it all begins right here. Not with some grand strategy or complex politics, but with this raw, incredibly painful accusation. This isn't just a simple disagreement. This is a blood feud in the making. This single line sets the emotional stakes for literally everything that follows. The entire conflict is built on this foundation of loss. So before this conflict just explodes onto the world stage, we really need to understand where it came from. This is where the battle lines are first drawn, and it's not over ideologies. It's over deeply personal wounds. What's so fascinating here is that you're looking at two positions that are completely irreconcilable. They just can't exist in the same room. On one side, you've got Gia, a Skrull whose entire motivation is that her parents were murdered. For her, that's everything. On the other side, you've got the Super Skrull, who's now leading the invasion, and he frames his actions as a necessary, if brutal, part of a much larger war. There's just no common ground. One is speaking the language of personal pain. The other is speaking the language of cold necessity.
Ooh, this line is just brilliant because it shows the conflict is absolutely loaded with history. It's about way more than just one event. This accusation connects Gilea's father to the whole situation, implying there's a pattern here, a legacy of betrayal. It's a really powerful way of saying, this isn't new. I know exactly what this is.
Okay, now let's see how this intensely personal fight explodes onto the political stage. We're about to see how one single public speech can take all that private grief and turn it into fuel for a much, much larger fire.
And there it is. That's the catalyst. This is the moment the conflict escalates way beyond a personal vendetta. Gia identifies this specific speech as the turning point, the moment any chance for peace was deliberately thrown away for political posturing.
And this is the crucial takeaway, right here. The speech wasn't seen as a solution. It was seen as an accelerant. It was like pouring gasoline on an already raging fire. The argument is that this political move wasn't just ineffective, it was actively destructive, making any kind of peaceful resolution basically impossible.
And this lays out the direct consequences perfectly. The speech wasn't just words. It had tangible, violent results. It inspired organized hit squads to form. It put friendly Skrulls, the ones who wanted to help, directly in the line of fire. And it unleashed what are called, quote, dumbass vigilantes. In the end, it just slammed the door on any hope for peace.
So what we're witnessing here is a classic vicious cycle. The political talk fuels violence, which in turn is used to justify even more extreme rhetoric and action. It's a crisis that's now feeding on itself, spiraling completely out of control. You can trace the chain reaction right here. It all starts with the speech. That speech then empowers vigilantes and hit squads. They, in turn, start hunting all Skrulls, making no distinction between enemies and potential allies. And what's the tragic result? Innocent humans get caught in the crossfire, killed by vigilantes who can't even tell friend from foe. It's a perfect storm of unintended, deadly consequences. And this is the core of the fallout, vigilantism. The speech didn't create a controlled surgical response. It just unleashed chaos. It empowered people to act as judge, jury, and executioner. And that leads to the exact kind of uncontrolled violence and collateral damage that's now unfolding. All of this, the personal grief, the political fallout, the vicious cycle of violence, it all leads to this moment, a final standoff. The lines have been drawn so starkly that there is absolutely no room left for compromise.
And here are the two final positions, laid out side by side. On one side, a direct demand for de-escalation. Call off your war. On the other, an absolute non-negotiable ultimatum. Get them off my planet. It's a demand for total expulsion. There is no middle ground here. One side wants to end the conflict. The other wants total victory.
This quote really says it all, doesn't it? Both sides have come to the grim conclusion that talking is over. The path of violence is now completely locked in. It's a statement of grim certainty, an admission that the only language they have left is force. And that, in a nutshell, is the anatomy of this conflict. It began with the deeply personal grief of one person, and fueled by inflammatory rhetoric and escalating violence, it metastasized into a crisis that now threatens the entire world. Which leaves us with a final crucial question. When communication breaks down and leaders choose ultimatums over understanding, who ultimately pays the price? As this conflict shows, it's the innocent, it's the allies, and eventually, it's everyone caught in the crossfire. Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.